Okay, the question of international versus domestic always seems to be the debated topic at these conferences, and typically there's never a conclusion. I think my philosophy is that let the best party win, right? My presentation is going to talk about the portfolio approach to economy hotels. I'm focusing specifically on economy hotels. However, this can also be applied to hotels trading within a different sector, simply because I believe that a portfolio is the only way to create a win-win situation among the stakeholders in a typical hotel scenario, being the guest, the operator, as well as the developer and the owner. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about Premier Inn. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I consider to be a definition, of a portfolio. Why a portfolio approach is desired, and perhaps why we're actually not taking it seriously enough. What I consider to be the key consideration, why certain things do not work, and even though we continue to do them, they simply do not work in my mind. And then I conclude with just an operator selection checklist, just for reference for, if you like, developers and owners in the audience that are looking for an operator, albeit an international or domestic operator. Very quickly, I think this is probably the third conference that Premier Inn is sponsoring. So those that tend to attend the other conferences or have attended previous conferences obviously have seen this before, but just very briefly for those that don't know, Premier Inn is owned by a company called Whitebread PLC. It's a UK-listed FTSE 100 company. It's been around for many, many years. It has multiple brands across the service industry, most notably Premier Inn, Costa Coffee, and a large restaurant business. Our current market cap is about $5.5 billion US. We're the largest and fastest growing UK economy hotel brand. Currently we have about 630 hotels, coming up to 49,000 rooms, predominantly across the UK, India, Middle East. And since the beginning of this year, we also started our growth plans for Asia Pacific. We are quite a bit different from most economy operators in the sense that we so far own effectively all our hotels, which makes Whitbread arguably one of the largest hotel owners in the world. We only are a single brand operator. So we don't have a 4-star or a 2-star or 1-star or 5-star brand. We only operate our business through Premier Inn. I think the other element, which I think is quite interesting, is that we have Costa Coffee, which is the second largest coffee outlet business in the world. In many of our hotels, we have a Costa Coffee outlet, or at least have some sort of presence of the brand. Just in terms of, again, putting a little bit of credibility to the whole story. Obviously, over the years, we've been given many awards. I think most notably, what I consider to be quite an important one is the world's leading budget brand in 2011 by World Travel Awards. And then subsequently, we've, in that same year, won several other awards. Again, I think just effectively, give you a little bit of context that although the brand may not be necessarily familiar, or may not be present in this part of the world, it certainly is in other parts of the world. Our long-term strategy, which I think fits in with the overall topic today, portfolio, is effectively what our CEO Andy Harrison has said on numerous occasions the last 12 months, which is really to make Premier Inn as successful internationally as at home. What that really means in normal terms is that if you look at our presence in the UK, where we have 45,000 rooms, the next group below us has roughly 20,000 rooms. What that effectively means is that we are a significant market leader in in the UK, Ireland, Wales, and the game plan would be to do exactly the same in other markets outside our home market, the UK. Not because we think that is the best way to mitigate our risk and be successful for our guests, is also because we are a single operator and only trade within the economy space. So in order to create a business with adequate value, we have to have a large enough business to make it worthwhile. We only started, as I said earlier, effectively a few months ago in Asia Pacific already. We have quite a significant pipeline with openings planned over the next 2 years. Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, other Southeast Asia, China is to follow, and then subsequently we look at the Pacific region, Australia, New Zealand, potentially Japan, Korea. So in terms of the portfolio approach, I started by just putting this on the screen because I guess at the end of the presentation it becomes clear that I'm stating the obvious. Yet somehow I think if we all look at our own hotel companies or brands, I think we perhaps can conclude in many cases that we do not have a portfolio, but we just have a group of hotels, which tend to be rather inconsistent and not necessarily perceived as a brand or as a cohesive group of hotels in the minds of consumers, who at the end of the day are the ones that have to stay in your hotel, generate the revenue, create the profits, and create the values and the returns to the investors. So it's stating the obvious, but maybe not. So in terms of what I consider to be some definitions of portfolio, and again, I think the backdrop of this conversation obviously is the fact that I'm working for Premier Inn and we've built up a significant portfolio in the UK and have seen the benefits of that. So first of all, again, looking at it from an economy/budget hotel point of view, first of all, critical mass and scale, right? I mean, obviously earlier people mentioned it's important that you need to have adequate presence in the domestic markets in order to be able to actually make a difference and see adequate distribution across the country to actually provide a total travel solution in terms of having multiple locations to a user, to a guest. Equally, critical mass is important in terms of driving your ops business in order to obviously be able to afford that. All right, not having enough hotels in one market simply makes it impossible to run a successful economy or budget brand because, first of all, the fees that you're generating on a per hotel basis are quite low, and anything else would just not yield enough to actually set up a large enough sales and marketing platform or ops platform that would support the hotel. I think the next point's similar. Effectively again, right? I look at portfolios as a group of hotels that are very similar in nature. They are very consistent in terms of facilities, the way service is being delivered, etc. And again, I think deviating from that, I think potentially will harm the ability to create critical mass, but also the ability to actually create a brand image or brand promise, which ultimately I think is what sticks with the end users and is what then make them decide to stay at your hotel. Clearly, in our case, we have, if you would go to all our properties, whether it's the UK or Middle East or India, you'll find that the hotels all look very similar. That doesn't mean that there are small tweaks left and right in the product to address some of the local requirements, whether they are, regulatory requirements or whether they just, from a guest expectation requirement. But on balance, though, you'll find that the room in the Middle East looks very similar to the room in London versus the room in Delhi. And all the rooms that we're currently doing in Asia Pacific, again, will be very similar. And again, that adds to the concept of creating a portfolio. The next definition is what I refer to as risk mitigant. Risk mitigant is obviously quite a broad term, but addresses really the total spectrum of all the stakeholders in the hotel sector, right? In terms of the hotel guest, by virtue of understanding the portfolio, understanding that there is that element of consistency, etc. That mitigates the risk of staying at the hotel. Risk mitigation from a developer's point of view, and I'll go over this in a minute, and obviously from a hotel operator's perspective as well. In terms of win for all stakeholders, as I just mentioned, quite frankly, I think is like this discussion just now about is the international operator or branded hotel better versus the domestic. I think at the end of the day, it depends entirely as to what your game plan is. If your game plan is to be a significant player in China and want to have 5,000 hotels, and you build your brand accordingly, your portfolio accordingly, you could be successful in your own rights and address all the objectives of the various stakeholders. Equally so, you could be an international player and seeking distribution across a region, but ending up only with a few hotels in each market. In that particular instance, you are probably not successful, and you're not actually addressing all the objectives of the various stakeholders. And then finally, as I just said, effectively, is that portfolio is what we tend to sell as hotel operators as a unique selling point. Whether it's a discussion about the critical mass that we've generated to have good distribution channels, or the critical mass that we've created because we have more human resources within the pool to actually manage the hotels, or whatever it may be. However, I think in reality, particularly when it comes to the economy hotel sector, just looking around Asia Pacific, there are effectively very, very few companies that have been able to build enough of a portfolio along the lines of my definition, what would really qualify as what I think is a successful business that has long-term potential. So just quickly summarizing on this point, right? As I said, portfolio from a guest perspective, it's quite simple. And again, referring back to, let's state the obvious, travelers want an affordable, clean, and consistent accommodation anytime, everywhere. I mean, it's a very simple concept. Everybody knows that. The reality, though, is that if you look at a lot of the economy change around the region, there is a tremendous amount of inconsistency. People have gone overboard on the dynamic pricing. And at the end of the day, the message of the portfolio that you're trying to set out is clearly not there. And you're not actually meeting your objective as an hotel operator or as a developer, because yes, you have a group of hotel arguably across multiple locations, but in reality, the consumer who ends up choosing the hotels is not seeing it that way. So affordable, clean, consistent, particularly consistent, I think is critically important, at any time, everywhere. And this goes back to the argument of distribution, where if you look at a country like Indonesia, you have to be in many, many locations in order to be able to create that sense of, if you stay in one location, you can also stay in the other location. And in cities like Jakarta, obviously you can have multiple locations in order to provide that availability of your product. In terms of portfolio from a developer owner perspective, I mean, I think, without going in too much detail, I think the bottom line is it's reduced risk, right? It's of no use to, as far as I'm concerned, it's of no use to, in the economy sector, just to be clear here, it's of no use to work with companies that clearly are not having or will not have a large enough portfolio. Clearly, looking at the economy space and doing some sort of analogy with perhaps the retail sector, where you look at the likes of 7-Eleven or even McDonald's, etc. It's about availability. The price point is such that you're targeting the masses. You're not targeting a select group of people, so you have to be everywhere. And that in itself, by virtue of your distribution, you're reducing risk as a developer working with an operator like that. And obviously, if you have the distribution, you have the dollars to build your sales and marketing and negotiate the best deals with, the third-party marketing agents or distribution channels, or what have you. Just as a side advantage, clearly, again, lower development costs. I think we all, as operators, know that talking to owners, the first discussion is always about the design and what's the budget of the hotel. In our case, for instance, we have developed very detailed product specs, which are communicated in a very efficient manner, which effectively allows us to get the design process behind us fairly quickly without having to engage in the same conversation every time we have a new relationship. As I said, better marketing dollars, and eventually, obviously, higher returns if you add it all up. I'm sure people will debate that, but I think if you go back to the main point where the portfolio is the one that drives the success, and if the portfolio is one that is put together in a way that it is a cohesive portfolio and provides the infrastructure to do things effectively and efficiently, that on balance should drive returns. But I'm sure people will not disagree with that. So from our point of view, at the end of the equation, if we have people that are, i.e. the guests are happy with what they're seeing, are being presented with opportunities to stay in multiple locations at the same type of pricing matrix or similar type product, that will create loyalty, and that helps us fill up the hotels, and it helps us to reduce our reliance on effectively third-party booking agents. I mean, in the UK, for instance, roughly 70% of our bookings come through the website or any of the other mobile device platforms. Similarly, if we can deliver value to the owners and the developer, again, it becomes quite an easy exercise for these people to say, we'll do more than one and we continue to work with you. And then obviously the two together will create that sense of income sustainability, value sustainability, and obviously growth, which is really what we're working towards. And I think, we only have to be honest and recognize and look around the region where we see hotel companies coming up. They have 3, 4, 5 hotels, and that is nice in a city or nice in a part of the country, but it doesn't actually create a valuable business over time, which in itself can compete effectively in the long term, because the reality is that others will come along and start either consolidating or start simply overtaking them. And I think again, looking at the current space in economy space in Asia Pacific, particularly Southeast Asia, whereas 5 years ago the branded or internationally branded economy sector wasn't really of much interest, but certainly today, obviously, loads and loads of international brands are rolling out their brands, as well as domestic groups are coming out with their own ideas. So no doubt, the ones that are able to come up with that, portfolio, if you like, are the ones that will be successful. So very quickly, because I only got 2 minutes left, key considerations, flags over keys. Again, from our point of view, we're not really interested in having one 600-room hotel in a market and that being our presence. The reality is that in order to create that portfolio, that brand awareness, that recognition and availability of your product to your end user, it's much more important to have multiple locations rather than a single location. Domestic first, then regional. What that means is that, let's recognize that the economy sector is all about domestic markets. And eventually, once the domestic markets have been taken care of, either the toll of the domestic markets or, just general evolution of that will translate into a regional market. I think with the exception of those groups that have very deep pockets, they can probably take a dual approach, but those that are less fortunate in terms of capital probably want to focus on one market first, build critical mass there, and then move on to perhaps a more regional approach. Again, as I said earlier, consistent product offering, with a brand promise, and obviously that brand promise is different to everybody. But in our case, we have a good night guarantee, which effectively implies that if people are unhappy with their stay and have genuine reasons for that, then we'll compensate them for their night stay, and that is quite a remarkable promise. But that is followed through across all the markets that we're working in, and that in itself is a promise that requires us to be consistent with the product, both from a physical product point of view as well as from a service delivery point of view. Sell and promote the brand. I mean, I think this is an interesting one where, too often we see situations whereby we have a particular hotel company. It can be a small company, a very large international company that tends to focus more on promoting the hotel company rather than the brand. And I think as part of the portfolio strategy, it all has to be about the brand. It doesn't need to be about the hotel company. So in our case, we are promoting Premier Inn. We're not promoting Whitbread. But in many cases, and I think we're all familiar with the larger companies, they tend to say we are ABC company, but that in itself doesn't add to the brand image, doesn't add to the image of creating a brand that eventually sticks in the minds of the end users. And that's particularly relevant if you're going into markets like Indonesia, where, okay, Jakarta is obviously an international city, but if you go beyond to some of the secondary, tertiary cities, people have never heard perhaps about some of the international brands, hotel companies rather, and the emphasis there should really be on the brand. Aggregate performance, clustering of development function support, obviously very key consideration in all of this, simply to make it all affordable and such that there is adequate value in the business. And then lastly, this is very important, is adopt a growth model that obviously delivers a win-win for all stakeholders. However, that model could evolve over time. And then be in control. And what that really means is that, we have to invest in the brand. In our case, we've made already considerable commitment to invest in the brand. If you would look at if you like, the meeting minutes of some of the analyst meetings in the UK with the PLC board, if you like, you'll find that we are committing considerable amounts of money to accelerate the expansion of Premier Inn in Asia Pacific. That in itself gives us the opportunity to be in control, be selective in terms of how we would want to grow, and how we would position the brand. And that in itself gives us that edge in our minds to end up with a cohesive portfolio that will eventually be a win for all parties that we're working with. So I'll leave
Maybe
that for
just
now.
1 or 2 more slides because we're a bit over the time.
Sorry?
How many slides more?
No, one more.
Okay.
I have one more, but I skipped this one. So just very quickly, in terms of operator checklist, which effectively is a summary of what I've talked about, right? I mean, anybody who has a development or is looking to build a hotel or wants a third-party operator, or perhaps a combination of an investor and an operator, I think these are probably one of the key questions that one wants to go through before contacting any of these operators, right? Are they brand focused or hotel group focused? And I think this is really where what's the emphasis of the management company? Are they trying to just add numbers to their portfolio, or are actually trying to build a brand that in itself creates that win-win situation for all stakeholders? Do they have a comprehensive strategy to establish and grow in a cohesive and large enough portfolio? Are they in control? Again, this is a very vital question, because we only have to look at the evolution of economy and budget hotels in the US and in Europe to recognize the ones that have become the biggest are the most successful. And particularly those that are in control, whether it's in terms of being in control in terms of the growth, or whether they're in control in terms of they are controlling the till and are effectively able to maintain the properties every so often. You'll find that those are the most successful ones. That may not be obvious today, but I think as the sector continues to evolve, you probably will find that there's going to be a handful of groups across Southeast Asia and China, and perhaps at some point even the Chinese brands coming across into Southeast Asia and have massive scale, and they eventually, I think, will make up the market. And then finally, how serious are they about their product? Is it again about numbers, or is it about actually creating a portfolio that over time is recognizable, is consistent, is affordable, and is available in many locations? And arguably, in today's market, there is not one international hotel operator that has covered all these grounds, to a point that we could conclude that they are the disputed leader by a mile and cannot be touched for that matter. For us, Premier Inn, We clearly are, very much, brand focused. We have a very comprehensive strategy. We're investing lots of dollars to build hotels ourselves or in partnership with other people, and we're very serious about our brand product. So I guess that's it.